So good afternoon. Welcome to our District Attorney Candidate Forum. My name is Ursula Minor. I'm President of the Lawrence Branch NAACP. I want to give a special thank you to the League of Women Voters of Lawrence and Douglas County for participating with the NAACP and hosting these forums. Members of the Lawrence Branch NAACP and the League of Women Voters have been working side by side to register voters in our high schools and at community events for years. This partnership is very compatible since both our organizations are nonpartisan. Our political activities are focused on voter registration, voter education, and most importantly, voter turnout at the polls. We appreciate the support our organizations have received from Watkins Museum of History and the Lawrence Public Library. The candidates participating in today's forum all have primary challengers. DA candidates who do not have primary challengers were invited to talk with voters during the informal visiting time afterward. Dakota Loomis, Suzanne Valdez, and Tonda Hill. Now let's review this afternoon's format for our candidates and the audience. The questions I will ask were developed by members of the NAACP and the League of Women Voters. Each candidate received the questions in advance. Each candidate will have specific amount of time to answer the questions. Our timekeeper, Wendell Kamari, will let each candidate know when and where 15 seconds left to respond, and then the time is up. We respectfully ask that the candidates stay within the time allotted for each question. The seating arrangement we have today was determined randomly. There will be no additional questions from the audience. Instead, we have asked the candidates to stay after the formal questions and answer period so you can visit with them. The League of Women Voters and the NAACP cannot endorse candidates, but all candidates are free to share campaign materials, seek volunteers, and answer additional questions. So let's begin. Okay, we will start with question 1. What programs and policies would you implement as district attorney to reduce crime and increase public safety in our community? 3 minutes, Dakota Loomis.
Thank you, Ursula. And can everyone hear me in the back?
Well, we can't see you. Stand up.
I'll stand and talk. That makes it a little easier. So, I think there's 3 separate things that I would address as district attorney to help ensure public safety and that our community was in a safer, stronger place. The first thing that I would address would be to recruit, retain, and train experienced, ethical prosecutors. Prosecution in Douglas County has to start with people in the office who know how to prosecute violent offenders, sex offenders, folks who have committed violent crimes against community members, and make sure that we hold those folks accountable. Now, that group of folks, that's not a huge number of cases in the office. That's not a huge number of people who come into the doors of the Douglas County District Attorney's Office. But our resources and our focus should be on having prosecutors up and down in every division that can handle serious violent offenses and make sure that people who harm someone else's community are held accountable. And having experienced prosecutors matters in a number of ways. It matters when you go into court to trial and you have to prosecute a case, but it also matters in the preparation of that case. It matters in how prosecutors know how to handle cases and what cases to prioritize. It matters with how defense counsel treats and deals with experienced, respectful prosecutors. Getting cases moved through the system that aren't high priority allows our prosecutors to focus on those cases that need extra resources, extra attention, and extra support from staff and other prosecutors. On the flip side, to ensure safety in this community, I think we need, as an office, to expand and diversify the alternatives to incarceration, alternatives to prosecution, programs like drug court, behavioral health court, pre-charging diversion, working with our law enforcement officers to get people help immediately if they have drug or mental health issues, so they don't even come into our system in the first place. So that's the second thing I think we should focus on and strengthen is the opposite side of this, which is getting people help who come into contact with our criminal justice system. The vast majority of people who come into the Douglas County Courthouse are not there because they are violent, dangerous people. They're people who have needs, be it economic, mental health, substance abuse, and getting them the types of resources they need will help reduce recidivism, increase their ability to get work afterwards, not saddle them with felonies, which makes it impossible to work in this community. I think the last thing I would say is that we need to have someone in the district attorney's office who is working collaboratively with our law enforcement partners and our organizations who do the really on-the-ground work here, be it mental health treatment, drugs, so DECA, ours helping the homeless, Bert Nash. Make sure there's someone who's got an open communication with all those organizations so we can work collaboratively together. Thank you.
Next we have Tonda Hill.
To answer this question, we first have to have an understanding about Kansas laws. And in Kansas, if a person commits a felony with a firearm, they are presumed prison. That's a violent offense. And it's very troubling when you have individuals doing crimes with firearms and they receive probation. It's also troubling when you have violent offenses like rapes and murders and there's acquittals at trial. So we must make sure that we are prosecuting violent offenses appropriately. And that is making sure that we have competent, skilled, experienced attorneys that can handle and try the cases. I was so concerned about some of the things that I learned about as far as the convictions and the kind of different pleas of probation that I decided to kind of think about running back in May. And during this time, May of 2023, Mr. Loomis and I, we met at Lady Bird, and we discussed what are ways we can do to make sure that the community is safe. And one of the things we discussed and made promises amongst ourselves was, not to have a 3-person race, but we're here. And so I used that as an opportunity to start reaching out to the community because we need community involvement. Reaching out to the north, to the east, to Sunset, to be proactive to hear what are crimes that are occurring in their particular area so we can develop situations communally to address those problems. I also heard during our visits with these particular neighborhood associations a program that we have in Wyandotte that I would like to bring here. In Wyandotte, we work with the federal government to refer cases with individuals who are on probation or parole or have a gun near a school to make sure those cases are prosecuted federally because there's different maximum and minimums in the federal system. So it's important to use the resources that we have. For instance, we have crimes that if a person commits a crime with a gun, it's presumed prison. We have the federal government that we can use to prosecute violent offenses. I also believe it is very important that we, as a community, take out individuals possessing guns illegally. I'm a 2024 Moms Demand Gun Sense candidate. I believe in the Second Amendment, but I also believe that we must have sensible gun control. So one of the things that I would like to do is to partner with law enforcement to do a gun buyback program. So individuals can turn in their guns, no questions asked, receive payment and money from it. The less firearms illegally in our system will most certainly curb violence. And those are some of the things that I would like to do as your next district attorney. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Suzanne Valdez.
So I am also a 2024 Gun Sense candidate because I have been, for the past 3 years, working with lots of organizations across the country, including prosecutors against gun violence, to reduce gun violence across the country. Everyone knows it is now considered a public health situation, especially involving our juveniles. On Monday, I'll be working with the school board. We're going to have a meeting about what we can do to decrease that in our community, because our community has been hit just like those across the country. After COVID, we've had absenteeism, we've had truancy problems where our kids are not going to school. And when they're not going to school, they're engaging in shenanigans, things that are violent. So we need to figure that out. We need to do some prevention, we need to do some education, and we need to take care of our children. But consider the question that was being asked. I will tell you that I want to give a shout out to our law enforcement who work every day 24/7 to keep our community safe. And they do that, and we work with them to ensure public safety. While there is no formal programming that I can authorize law enforcement to do because that's not my lane, I work with them collaborating every day to determine where the issues are concerning public safety. This is a 24/7 job, 24/7, 365-day job a year. We're trying to make sure that our community is safe and hold those accountable that engage in violent crime. Formally, my office takes strong policy positions on gun violence. In fact, we have a no tolerance policy for gun violence, and we do what we can. We also go after illegal drug distributions and fentanyl. Fentanyl is a big problem in this community, and people are dying because of fentanyl distribution. We are using our resources to do that. Lastly, we are going after child sex assault and adult sex assault cases. We are preparing those cases with our law enforcement agencies. We are doing everything we can to prevent those crimes. And this is violent crime in our community where we're using our resources. The second piece I want to talk about is prevention. We need to do everything we can to prevent gun violence, especially juvenile gun violence. We need to do everything we can to prevent fentanyl and the awareness of fentanyl. I am out there so people don't die. I am out there in the community trying to educate high schools, colleges, sororities, fraternities about the dangers of fentanyl use and death. Lastly, I will say that we are doing all kinds of multidisciplinary teamwork from the homelessness team, from the mental health team, from the drug and alcohol team that involve multidisciplinary people involving the Kansas Department of Children and Families, DECA, Burt Nash, all of those community partners who come together and figure out, do we need to put this person in the criminal justice system or not? Can we use alternatives? Do we need to put them in the criminal justice system to hold accountable? That's what we're doing, that's what we've been doing, and that's what we're going to continue to do when I get reelected. Thank you.
Studies show racial disparities in drug law enforcement, despite the fact that white people and people of color use the same drugs at the same rate. What will you do to minimize these disparities? 2 minutes. We will start with Tonda.
Thank you. So we first have to start with the district attorney receives case from law enforcement. And so we can't prosecute crimes on our own. Law enforcement, they see something, they file an affidavit, they give it to us, and then we make a decision using our discretion on whether or not we want to prosecute it. On June the 22nd, I was at a meeting, a morning coffee meeting, and I spoke with a fellow Lawrence resident. And she gave me a story about her son that's really impactful for this question that we're talking about. She told me that her son was arrested with a vast amount of marijuana in his car. And she was actually happy about this arrest because she knew that the marijuana wasn't simple marijuana. It was actually impacting her son's life negatively. And she was hoping that this arrest was going to be that turnaround, the thing that he needed to get treatment and get help. But her happiness soon turned to sadness because for some reason the district attorney dismissed the case without any type of explanation. She didn't know why, and this individual wasn't able to use the services like drug court and other particular things to get the help that he needed. This is an example of how sometimes discretion is being used to prosecute certain cases over another. And that it matters the perspective of this individual that's sitting in the seat that will make those decisions. You have to have an individual that has experiences with outside communities than their own. Because if not, then that's where the discretion turns into, unfortunately, discrimination. And so as the district attorney, I will make sure to look at all crimes and be fairly and impartially, but use my discretion in how I prosecute them.
Next we'll have Suzanne Valdez.
So the war on drugs began in the late 1970s and 1980s, and as a result, the difference between crack cocaine and crack has resulted in mass incarceration of brown and black people. We've seen that, and we're trying to fix it. As a result, my policies here in Douglas County are very simple, and we're enforcing them, and it's working. Simple possession of marijuana has not been prosecuted for years. We're not doing it. We are prosecuting distributors of drugs, especially fentanyl and anything else, it's highly addictive. To Ms. Hill's point, the reason that case was dismissed was because whatever case she's talking about, was probably there was a lack of evidence, there was going to be some reason that we could not prosecute it. That is using prosecutorial discretion, not to prosecute something where we may lose on a motion to suppress. So I want to make that very, very clear. This has nothing to do with our policy on charging individuals who are distributing drugs. And we would have done it in this case, and we would have gone forward in this case if we would have had the evidence to do so. The other thing I want to tell you is that we're using our alternatives. We cannot prosecute our way out of addiction. We cannot prosecute our way out of mental illness. We are using all of our alternative programs, our drug court, our behavioral health court, our restorative justice, our robust diversion programs, which, by the way, we do not charge any fee for from the DA's office to process, to ensure accessibility. So in terms of the disparities between black and brown and whites, believe me, it's something that I have had to live with my entire professional life and that I am working to fix some way or another. We're doing it, we're making progress. The big thing that I want to share with you, which is very exciting, is that our drug court has a robust program of individuals, and it has increased dramatically in the number of brown people and black people who are in that program. I am very excited about it. Look at the statistics, it's on the Douglas County website. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Dakota Loomis.
Thank you, Ursula. I think first and foremost, there are policies in place, as Ms. Valdez just said, DA Valdez just said, start under DA Branson to not charge misdemeanor simple possession of marijuana. That would certainly continue in an administration if I was the Douglas County District Attorney. But additionally, we need to, I think, expand that policy, expand the alternatives to prosecution for folks who are simply addicted to drugs, be them marijuana, cocaine, methamphetamine, opioids, where we can get in and get them help as soon as humanly possible. As a defense attorney, I often get cases 5, 6, 7 months after the initial stop with law enforcement, because we have to send drugs off to the KBI for lab testing. In that 5, 6, 7 months, what happens? My client comes to me still addicted to whatever drugs they're taking, still not receiving services, and instead they've now oftentimes picked up new charges, have gotten further into use, further into a spiral of addiction and depression. Getting interventions at an early stage is crucial to helping people get out of our system. Pre-charging diversion, working with law enforcement to get people connected to service providers in our community immediately upon contact with law enforcement. If law enforcement stops someone, law enforcement comes in contact with someone who has fentanyl on them, get them into a treatment program before worrying about getting them into the courthouse. Making sure that they're safe and they're taken care of with the services they need should be our top priority as a community. I would hope that everyone on this dais would agree with me that prosecuting misdemeanor marijuana is a time suck that does not address the underlying issues that we see in our community. I think continuing that policy is a needed policy because, again, it goes back to discretion. If every case that comes across my desk with misdemeanor marijuana is that certain people are being targeted for that, I can't, if we don't charge those, we can't use that discretion. I'd also talk about 2 other things. First, race-blind charging. Get affidavits, oh, sorry. It'll come up number 3.
Okay, we'll go to question number 3. We'll start with Suzanne. As of May 2024, 49% of in-custody population in Douglas County, Kansas is black. This is based on data from May 2024, 4.5.3 XLSX, which shows 49% of in-custody population is black, while 88% is male, 12% is female. What would you do to put in place to decrease these statistics? 3 minutes.
So we're working on this every day. I've been working on this every day since I took office in 2021. The dashboard numbers that Ursula just talked about are actually updated weekly. So that was as of May. I just looked at the most recent data, and 31% are black and 57% are white. So these updates come up every week or so, and they're posted. And the point is that this is a very fluid situation. Law enforcement agencies bring in folks on arrest. We have 7 different law enforcement agencies. We have holds. There are all kinds of things that make up the jail population. So I will tell you that that number isn't great, but it is not, it's very, very fluid, and we work on it. If you really dig into the data, you see that mostly that the people that are in the jail are failures to appear. These are for municipal court and for district court failures to appear. These are not on behalf of the district attorney's office. These are not on my cases. The rest of the cases that you see, which are violent offenders, again, folks, we're not using the jail for people who smoke pot or who steal bicycles. The people that are in the jail on DA charges are on violent offenses, murder, attempted murder, rape, child sexual assault. These are violent offenses. And I went through that list today, and I can tell you that those are the people that are in the jail for these offenses being held on bond, okay? So I don't care whether you're black, you're white, you're green, you're purple with yellow hair. If you are committing that kind of violent crime in this community, the bond will be set by the judge, and then the case will go forward. And if you have to sit in jail while you're waiting for your time in court, so be it. So I want to point out that the makeup, again, I was very proud to look at the fact that most of these cases are failures to appear, which the DA's office has no part in. We can charge a failure to appear, but I have not done that in my entire administration as DA. So I'd ask you to look at that makeup. Of course, we're always looking at it. Is there any way that we can get people out on pretrial release? The other thing I will tell you is we have the most robust pretrial release program probably in the country. Most people who are in jail, again, very small number of people, but a lot of offenders are out on pretrial release because the county supports a pretrial release program that keeps people in the community, keeps them working, and keeps them out of jail. We want to keep those jail numbers low. It's a very, very delicate balance, but one that we take very, very serious. I look at those numbers every week. I looked at them again this morning, and I can tell you that everybody in that jail is there for a serious offense. Thank you.
Dakota Loomis.
Thank you so much.
You're all good. So I checked the data too this morning, and the average stay for someone who's black is 40.5 days in Douglas County Jail. If you're white, it's 13.4 days. If you're Hispanic, it's 13.9. If you're Native American, it's, I believe, 12.7. That's just unacceptable. And I don't think that can be explained away purely by the type of crimes people are being held on. I think that can be explained away by 19 different variables, but the things that the district attorney's office can control, there's a few things they can control. I talked about this a little bit, started talking about it. When you get people charging documents coming in, doing race-blind assessments. Every time a case comes in from law enforcement, you get racial data, you get the age of the people, where their addresses are. Removing that data removes all the implicit biases that we have every single day when we look at cases. So if I don't know, when I look at a case to charge it, the age of the alleged offender, I don't know their race, I don't know where they live, all those things go into, unfortunately, how we treat cases and how we prosecute cases as prosecutors. You see it again and again across every sector of our community. How black women are treated in hospitals for prenatal care. How black children are treated in preschool and in schools where their behavior is treated as aggressive, where white children like me would be treated as being just a boy being boys, kids being kids. This builds up on itself over time until it gets to the district attorney's office when cases come across the desk. So removing those implicit biases is an important step to make sure we're focusing on the right issues. Can we prove a crime? Has a crime occurred? Second, I'd say is we need to, I think, stop, or at least discourage, highly discourage pretextual stops. Kansas State Troopers, last year, there's a case in federal court, clearly we're making pretextual stops targeting people from out of state who were brown and black. Pretextual stops cannot undermine the entire purpose of the judicial system, which is to treat people fairly and evenly. And pretextual stops often occur to young men of color. Making sure that we work with law enforcement to discourage that practice is a key step to keeping people out of custody for other offenses. The last thing I talk about here is, we talk about in custody cases, is we should still be decreasing the total number of people in custody and the total number of time people spend in custody. Getting people out on pretrial release, house arrest. moving cases quickly. Far too often, people are in custody because their case has languished in the court system because nothing's been done to move the case along. As a prosecutor, as the district attorney, you need to be prioritizing cases, making sure that people who are in custody are being put up the list so we can get them to their day in court, make sure that if they want a trial, they get there, but if they're willing to take a deal or if they want to be released on pretrial programs, we work with them on those as well. So again, every day in custody destroys lives.
Next.
Thank you. Next we have Tonda Hill.
I'm so glad that Mr. Loomis brought those facts in because that was actually on my list to bring in. And also to talk about the fact that the Criminal Justice Coordination Council here in Lawrence, they stated that the black rate in Douglas County jails and custody is higher than the US. So again, we can't just blame it on other factors like municipal court, because the individuals that make the bond decisions for the in custody, that's the district attorney. They make those decisions. And one of the things that I would like to stress is you have to make sure that the individuals are using the law to guide their decisions. Whoever is the next district attorney, they're gonna have to take an oath. And that oath is to defend the Constitution and the US Constitution and the Kansas laws. So if you have a district attorney stand before you to say, I will not prosecute a law, that means that they have no problem breaking other things. That means they're not using the law to guide them. They're using their personal beliefs, their bias, all of those things to guide their decisions. You want a district attorney that says, I will follow the law, regardless if it's unpopular, because we are supposed to prosecute without fear or favor. And in Kansas, it's illegal to possess marijuana, so you use your discretion to do that appropriately to get those individuals the help that they need. So that's one way if we're talking about really impacting the system, is making sure you have a district attorney with integrity that is going to enforce the laws evenly and impartially. I also worked on the Justice Matters that had a Bureau report, and they provided specific details that should be followed. And I hope whoever's in this seat gets the Bureau report and actually follows their recommendations. Such recommendations included creating cross-training amongst the staff with the law enforcement for implicit bias. Not rhetoric, but making sure that you're doing things appropriately to give them the training that they need to make important decisions. So we have to have a district attorney that is also knowledgeable about the community, engaging in every place, every single individuals, North, East, Picnic, Lecompton, Baldwin City, Eudora, not excluding particular individuals, because when we broaden our perspective, that is how we then can enforce laws fairly and evenly, and that makes sure that when we're making those bail and bond decisions, we're doing it in a neutral basis. Thank you.
Next, we'll have question number 4. For lower level crimes in light of high cost per inmate and high recidivism rate, would medical counseling and other diversion programs be a better use of resources and provide better results for our community? What criteria would you use in determining this? And Tonda, you were first.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Sorry. Yes, I absolutely agree that we need to be making sure we're doing alternatives to prosecution. And I gave a case, to prison. And I gave a case last time during our forum that highlighted that we shouldn't be criminalizing mental health, poverty, addiction, that we should be doing wraparound services for individuals that need the particular help. That to make sure that we are focusing our attention on violent crimes and not other things. I also believe it's important to utilize the programs and the successful programs that we have. So the behavioral health court, the drug court, the diversion. I have seen the impact of a veterans court. We have one in Wyandotte County. I believe that is another absolute important resource to make sure that we're doing those alternatives to give individuals an opportunity to have accountability for their actions, but we have to make sure that the approach is measured and pragmatic. And that only comes when you're looking at the cases on an individual basis. So violent crimes you handle one way, but issues that aren't related to violence, that are related to mental health or other avenues, you have to make sure you're doing that. And that also comes with collaborating with stakeholders. So currently, Burton Nash has to outsource filing of cases for a lot of cases that were traditionally in the district attorney's office. These are called care and treatment cases. Burton Nash has to pay another law firm to handle these cases instead of the district attorney's office. That is money coming from that area that could be servicing those residents that need the most. So when I become district attorney, I will refile those cases and make sure that services are applied appropriately.
Thank you. Next we have Suzanne Valdez.
Yeah, sure. So I just want to clarify, the Treatment and Recovery Center does help people who are in distress, and law enforcement, unfortunately, has had to learn how to deal with people who have mental illness and have addiction issues. So shout out for our Treatment and Recovery Center. That's where a lot of the intervention does take place, and hopefully all these people that are in crisis are dealt with, and they never even see our office. So I want to clarify that point, and I'm glad that the Treatment and Recovery Center is working. It's working very well so that we don't have to see them, those individuals, and have them in the criminal justice system. The other point I want to make is that we do race-blind charging. I mean, that's something that we do. And again, we base every case on its merits and whether we need to use our prosecutorial resources to prosecute violent crime. The other big point I want to make is Ms. Hill's point that I make decisions about bond. I do not make decisions about bond. That's a judicial function. I do not make decisions about municipal bonds. That's outside my authority. That goes to the municipal court. So I have nothing to do with the bond decision. That is a judicial function. What I do is support pretrial services, home or house arrest, all those things to keep people in their community if they're nonviolent offenders. So those are clarifications that I want to make to both the points that were made earlier. Considering the question, we're already doing the alternatives to incarceration. Folks, I said I was going to do this in 2020. We're doing it. In fact, we've never had such robust enrollments in both drug court and behavioral health court. We've had graduations. We have people return to their community. It is amazing to see. We're going to add a veterans treatment court. That's something that's been near and dear to my heart. In fact, my son, who's serving in the U.S. Army, is here today to show support for this particular point. This idea, I'm doing the work. There's nothing here that they've offered that I'm not doing. And I'm going to do it better, and I'm going to continue to do the things that we're doing. There's always something to be done. I'm glad to hear about all their ideas, but they're kind of already being done.
We have Dakota Loomis.
So I think the answer to this question is yes across the board. Yes, we should be doing more with mental health services. Yes, we should be doing more to get people into treatment. Yes, we should be doing more to alternatives to incarceration, be it pre-charging, post-charging, diversion programs, enhanced diversion. And DA Valdez is absolutely correct. There are a number of programs that are stood up right now that are offering those services to folks as of today. The issue is that there needs to be an expansion of those programs. We need to redirect resources to those programs for nonviolent offenders, first-time offenders, young offenders, juvenile offenders, and make sure they get into those programs as soon as humanly possible to avoid the negative outcomes of being in custody, the negative outcomes of being in the court system. Every day you're in custody, you're closer to losing your house, you're closer to losing your child, you're closer to losing your pet, job, you name it. Being in custody in Douglas County is doing harm to individuals and families every single day someone's in there. So as district attorney, I'd be open to any and all alternatives, be it house arrest, expanded pretrial release policies. As far as the district attorney's role, again, you can actively ask for certain bond conditions. You can actively ask for the judge to do certain things with bond. You can't set bond, but you can argue on behalf of that. And so when I go into court right now as a defense attorney, I'm arguing to keep my clients out of custody. I'm asking the judge to do anything but put them back in custody. The district attorney's office can join with me or not. That's the power the district attorney's office has, is to make recommendations. The district attorney's office can do that based upon criteria, failures to appear, danger to the community, but making sure those are clearly dictated to the court is crucial for this situation. The last thing I'd say is, I'm in the drug court. I've been fighting for people in the drug court I had a client who stole a bike, was denied drug court. This office wanted to put him in custody for 162 months. That's all I'm going to say.
Next, we have question number 5. What should be the relationship between the DA and local law enforcement? We will start with Dakota Loomis.
I think the relationship between local law enforcement and the district attorney should be respectful, professional, and transparent. I think every day you're working with law enforcement. You have to agree with law enforcement every single day, but they are partners with the district attorney's office in the prosecution of cases. In a sense, it's a trust but verify. So every day you're working with law enforcement, if you can't have open communication with them, you can't have open disagreements with them and work to resolve situations in a collaborative way, what you end up with is cases being investigated substandard level or missing things that the district attorney's office knows about and can help law enforcement, guide law enforcement to better do their job. Similarly, law enforcement can better guide the district attorney's office to know who they're dealing with day in, day out, who may be a problem in the community that we wouldn't see on single cases coming in, but they have better experience being the people in the field, working in our communities every day, talking with the folks in our community to see who really needs to be policed in a different way, who needs to be prosecuted in a different way. I'd also say, as a Baldwin City attorney, I work closely with Chief Patrick in Baldwin City. Politically, we could not be further apart. He's conservative Republican, I'm not. Professionally, we share very similar values. He shares values with me about respect, trust, openness. When we have issues, Chief Patrick and I can sit down and talk about them immediately. Recently, we had a suppression issue that came up. I learned that the office was doing things that were going to be a problem for us in court. Chief Patrick and I sat down immediately. He came up with a solution, implemented that solution. We talked with the officer, explained why we needed to be doing things in a different way. And because we had an open policy, because we had trust between the two of us, officers listened to me and I listened to them about how I could best help them come to the court with the evidence we need to convict people of DUIs and other crimes in Baldwin City.
Thank you. Next, we have Tonda Hill.
So the relationship between law enforcement and the district attorney's office should be one of mutual respect and understanding each other's roles. So the police, law enforcement, and the district attorney have different roles. However, they must work collaboratively for the shared mission of the community. I have never taken a case to trial where I didn't need additional resources and help from law enforcement. And that didn't mean that the law enforcement didn't do a great job. It meant that as a trial attorney, I know what a jury wants to see. I know what they're looking for. So routinely, I'm able to work with the detective and the officers. We come into my office and we discuss, hey, a juror might want to look at or think about. Now, I can't direct the officer to do anything. I can make the suggestion and they can say, Tonda, whatever. Really, they can. But because I've developed this rapport with them, they're more apt to say, you're right, let's go and do that. I have a trial coming up in 2 weeks on July the 8th. After I leave this forum, I'm going to head to Kansas City to do the same thing that I'm talking about, to review the case, take it one step at a time, do best practices. That's the type of relationship you need. You also need a relationship where you can train. So if an individual is doing things improperly as far as stops, violating individuals' constitutional rights, you need to have the rapport with them so that you can come and say, let's do this type of training. When I was the director of the Sexual Assault Victims Unit, I routinely trained officers about best practice. An example, I had an officer do an interview and ask the survivor, did you orgasm? That's inappropriate, right, to say to someone. But because I had the rapport, I was able to talk with them and allow them to listen and change and do best practices, and that's what you need as a district attorney.
Thank you. Next, we have Suzanne Valdez.
So law enforcement and prosecutors we're one family. We're the state. We prosecute crimes. Law enforcement does their investigation. We do the prosecution. It has to stay that way because we're all both in separate lanes. I will tell you that it is one that's like a sibling relationship. Sometimes you get along, sometimes you don't, but you work it out and you do what you got to do on behalf of victims and the community for public safety. I will tell you that one of the things I'm very proud of is our Brady Giglio policy, which we implemented immediately after, about a year after I was in office. We worked with all of our law enforcement partners to make this work, and our checklist so that we can make sure that anyone who testifies, any law enforcement officer who testifies in a very serious case is not giglioed. And when to be giglioed means that you've engaged in some sort of misconduct that needs to be divulged to the defense. And I will tell you, as Mr. Loomis has said that he works with Chief Patrick, he is the only, Baldwin City has the only giglioed police officer that I have refused to take testimony from because he has stolen things and he has not been truthful. I made that clear to Mr. Loomis, and he still is using him as a Baldwin City police officer. So take that into consideration. I will tell you, we have good people working on the streets, keeping our community safe, but I will not take any testimony or prosecute any case where anyone is giglioed. And Mr. Loomis knows that. The relationship is one of collaboration. We have law enforcement officers coming in our office every day, working all the time on these cases. Yes, there was a distraction about the policy. You know why? Because there wasn't one in place before. And you know what? People don't like change. But it is my constitutional obligation to make sure that I don't put any officer on the stand who has lied or done anything that violates constitutional law. And I will continue to do it. It's all worked out, and I'm proud of the work that our community is doing and the work that our law enforcement agencies do every day.
Thank you. What would you like to say in closing? 3 minutes. We will start with Suzanne Valdez.
I have been your DA for 3.5 years, and I have a proven record, and I have been tested. I am tested by people like this every day, and I get it done. I get it done, no matter the distraction. You know why? Because I care about every single one of you in this community. And in 2020, I promised change. I am making that change, and it makes a lot of people unhappy, okay? It makes the establishment unhappy, all right? They want me out. All right? But I am not going to go without fighting. I am going to continue to work for victims every day. I'm going to continue to work for this community. I'm going to continue to collaborate with all of our community partners, and there are many who care in this community. I see a lot of you in this audience today. Bert Nash, DECA, Kansas Department of Children and Families, Child Advocacy Center, all of these great resources, community criminal justice services, everyone, every day who cares about the community safety of our community. The DA's office is but one piece of it, one piece of it. And to be arrogant enough to say that you're going to be making all these changes and you can do this and you can do that, believe me, there's a price to pay, because you know what? I've been paying it. And I suck it up every day, and I make sure that you know what, no matter what, I'm telling people no. I'm telling people we need to work on this. I'm telling people we need to collaborate on this. I've done that every single day. I get up every single day and I worry about public safety every day. And I do that because I care. And I also want to reimagine the criminal justice system. It hasn't worked. It's been embedded in racism, in sexism, and all the things that are not okay. And this community, Douglas County community, no matter the haters in this room, is a model for criminal justice reform across the country. And I go across the country and I hear people telling me that. And I am encouraged by all of that. And I'm going to continue to do that. And I ask for your vote on August 6th, because there's a lot to do. And no matter the distractions, my office is getting things done. Onward. We're prosecuting those crimes, we're prosecuting violent crimes, and we have a robust alternatives to incarceration program. We want people with their families. We want people to thrive. We want people to have second chances. Our expungement programs are second to none. I'm begging people to file their petition for expungement. You know why? So I can clear their record, so that they can get a job, so that they can get a promotion, so that they can do all the things that they want to do in their community, and for which, but for the fact that they were in the system, has been detrimental to their growth. I want to reduce the criminal justice system, the footprint of the criminal justice system, and that is what I have been doing. And I am very proud of my DA team. I'm very proud of all the things that we've done, and I want to continue to do it, and I ask that you give me 4 more years. Thank you.
So I've gone over with you what my priorities would be if I was elected as district attorney. It's to restore professionalism, the office restore respect to the Douglas County Courthouse, to recruit and retain prosecutors who can do the job, do the work that we need to do every single day to keep this community safe, while also using their experience and training to use discretion to make sure people are staying out of the system who need to be in alternatives to the criminal justice system, be it with Burt Nash, with DECA, with ARS helping the homeless, with any of the number of organizations across our community who are doing the real work day in, day out to make people safer, to address their underlying issues that lead them into contact with law enforcement and the criminal justice system. I've worked in the Douglas County Courthouse now for the past 10 years. I've been in Douglas County for next week 44 years. I've been going across this community since I started working for the Social Service League, Humane Society. I've worked across this community with different organizations to support our community and support expansion of programs for folks who do not necessarily have the means or access to those programs. As a district attorney's office, that collaboration would continue and expand to make sure that the folks that I'm working with as a drug court defense attorney are having even more access to the people who need their help, who need their assistance. So we're keeping people out of custody. We're keeping people in programs that will help them to not recommit offenses, to not come back into the Douglas County Courthouse. But those are all the things I can tell you. What I've asked of you is go to the courthouse, talk to attorneys in this community, talk to court reporters, talk to probation officers, talk to law enforcement officers who've worked with me. Ask them what their opinion is of me. I can tell you all day long how great I am or what all the things I'm going to do. What I can't do is verify that for you. I'd ask that you go around this community and talk to people who've worked with me, my clients, be it Baldwin City, the people I've represented who've been charged with crimes. Talk with them and ask them what they think my values are. I think if you talk with them, you'll hear the values I have for them. It's respect. Respect for them, respect for this office, respect for the system. That I treat folks with dignity and fairness. And that those are the shared values that I want to bring back to this community. That I want to make sure that all of our organizations working together can impose those values on our community to make us a safer, more connected community where all of our organizations are working in concert to get the help to the people who need it and keep the few folks who are violent offenders in custody and off our streets. So with professional, dedicated prosecutors, expansion of alternative programs, and then a restoration of professionalism to the office, I believe we can do that. That's why I'm asking you to vote for me on August 6th. Thank you.
Next we have Tonda Hill.
In January of 2017, when I launched my campaign as the first challenger, I contacted Democrats that I believe shared the platform of embracing inclusion and fighting for democracy. I was shocked when several individuals declined to meet with me, not because of my race or my sex, but because they had a relationship with a potential candidate. Businesses refused to allow me to pay them money to use their establishment for campaign events. I was targeted online with hate, perks, and announcements given to some that I did not have the social capital to receive. These early rejections created doubt. I even contemplating withdrawing my candidacy. But I'm so grateful for my supporters and their encouragement. Their words reminded me that I could not waste the opportunity to engage in this democratic process, given the sacrifices that have been made to even have my name on the ballot. I told myself over and over, like I'm telling myself today, I cannot quit. Then I wouldn't be an example for those challenging the status quo. And as time continued, my confidence built because their actions also highlighted something important, that I have something of value to offer this community for your consideration. So I'll close by saying what some have tried to silence and discredit. Douglas County, you deserve to elect a competent leader that has unmatched trial, criminal law, and professional experiences. You deserve to elect a compassionate leader that has devoted their life to public service, practices trauma-informed advocacy, and would never mock any member of this community. Your next district attorney should be an individual that doesn't applaud or sympathize with the current administration, nor should they have close, personal relationships of trust that could cause conflicts for future prosecution. And that's why on August the 6th, and hey, if you vote early on July the 17th, I'm asking you to vote for the most qualified candidate whose actions, not their words, have demonstrated a commitment to public service, inclusion, because that's how we make sure we're enforcing the laws fairly, impartially, for the betterment of all of us. Thank you so much.